So thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the 2025 Southeast Collaborative Online Conference. My name is Lauren Clossy. I will be your host for this session entitled Creating Connections, Reaching Underserved Patrons of All Ages Through Community Outreach. This event is made possible in part by a Library Services and Technology Act grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services administered by the State Libraries of North and South Carolina. The views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this presentation do not necessarily represent those of the Institute of Museum and Library Services or the State Libraries of North and South Carolina. Please feel free to ask questions and communicate with other attendees within the Whova app for this presentation, and thank you so much for being with us. I'll pass it over to you all.
All right, thank you so for creating connections. My name is Sarah Seaver. I am the Assistant Director for Neuse Regional Libraries. And joining me are Justin Stout. He is our Head of Information Services. Next slide, please. And Joyce Hawkins. She is our social worker. And so we're very happy to be able to present to you just a little bit of information on our library system. So Neuse Regional Libraries, next slide. Thank you. Are in Eastern North Carolina. So we are actually about midway between the Raleigh-Durham area and the beautiful beaches of the Crystal Coast. And we serve Lenoir, Jones, and Greene counties. And there are 8 libraries distributed throughout those 3 counties. And we've got a couple of things we're proud of. Our minor league baseball team, the Down East Bird Dogs, and Mother Earth Brewing. So just to tell you a little bit about what we hope everyone's going to learn today, we'd like people to have a better understanding of how to reach underserved patrons and how to identify locations in which you can do outreach for this. Also, how you can use traditional library services and combine them with non-traditional services to reinforce the idea of the library as a community center. And then lastly, how libraries can potentially replicate these services, some of which using LSTA grants, which we'll talk about, but also we're gonna discuss a lot of free stuff too. So I'm gonna hand it over to Justin. He's gonna talk a little bit more about our approach to outreach as well as one of our ongoing projects.
Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you again to the SACC conference for inviting us to speak about this topic. I wanted to start out by talking a little bit about our strategic plan and how it informs our philosophy of outreach and how we use outreach to better serve underserved patrons. I realize this isn't the most exciting part of the presentation, but we really do think it is illustrative of how our strategic plan is really vital in informing our approach to outreach and to trying to reach underserved patrons. So our vision statement is that we enrich lives by inspiring creativity, fostering learning, and engaging community. Our mission statement is that we're centers for community connections that provide evolving and accessible technologies, programming, services, and collections that are as diverse and intergenerational as the people of Lenoir, Jones, and Greene counties. And our strategic plan, I should say our latest strategic plan is 2023 through 2028, and we've divided it up into several areas of focus. One of our areas of focus is access and awareness. And a goal that we've identified in that area of focus is that we want to implement access without restrictions to diverse collections, programming, and services for all community members in a safe and inclusive environment. And then the action step that we've identified in pursuit of that goal is that we want to expand outreach throughout the region to bring new opportunities for STEM education, early literacy, increased access to technology, and enrichment activities to identify communities with one or more barriers to access. And we're going to talk more about that in just one moment. We've had the good fortune to be able to talk before about our efforts to try to better reach underserved patrons. And I really like that it always gives us a chance to reflect on our role, on the library's role in present day society. Traditionally, we've been that provider of information services. We help look up information for people, and we do still provide that service and fill that role. But we've become so much more of a place now, a place where people can go to access. If they need access to Wi-Fi, they can come to one of our locations and use the Wi-Fi there, or even one of our hotspots out in the community. If they need to fill out a job application, or if they need to apply for social services or pursue online education, they can come and use our workstations for that. We've really become so much more of a community center where people can go and actually interact with other people in the community. And there's so, again, going back to having to do so many things online these days, there are so fewer of these, what people call third places in the community now, those places outside of work and home where people can actually interact with the community. They can have conversations with other people and really contribute to the bigger community, make it more vibrant. So we realized that there are so fewer of those now. We wanted to identify other third places in the community we could connect with and really reinforce our own role as a community center as well. So going back to underserved communities, we do want to define what we mean by that. There is a formal definition from FEMA. That's groups that have limited or no access to resources or that are otherwise disenfranchised. We can also look at it from our perspective as a library, as those patrons that have significant barriers to accessing our resources, or maybe just aren't aware of what we have to offer, even though there are things that we offer that could greatly help them in their life. So those definitions overlap in a lot of ways, and we've identified some of these communities where those definitions definitely are overlapping. Low-income patrons in need of food or housing assistance, patrons without transportation, patrons with disabilities, and ESL patrons are just a few of the different underserved communities that we've tried to make significant efforts to try to better connect with. So I do want to share a case study with you of a specific place we located in the community where we could do outreach, and specifically where we could do some digital literacy outreach. So the Friends of the Homeless Shelter is a shelter for the unhoused in our community that's within walking distance of our library. And we realized that many of the guests at the shelter were spending much of the day at our library. And we knew that there was a significant need there for increased digital literacy because, again, it's just so critical for doing anything to better your life, to getting a new job, to even to applying for social services. A lot of times you need an email address or you need to be able to use the computer and fill out an online application. So we knew the need was there for increased digital literacy, but we just weren't sure how we were going to connect with people, even though they were coming into our library. How could we approach them and really sell them on the idea that we can help them with improving their digital literacy? So we realized that we could potentially go to them and then offer a digital literacy class for them. And we started doing this in early 2022. It's gone on since then, and we've had a lot of successes with it. And it also, the partnership that has resulted from this has resulted in other projects as well that Sarah is going to talk about in just a moment. So when we first went to the shelter to do digital literacy outreach, we did a more traditional digital literacy information session where we would show different topics and demonstrate them and let people follow along on their laptops. But we realized this was not the most effective way to do this. There were some significant challenges to doing things that way. The most significant challenge was definitely that we had individuals at various levels of digital literacy in the digital literacy session. So it was difficult to pick a topic that would appeal to everyone or that everyone could use. So we found a great solution to this in the form of North Star Digital Literacy. The State Library of North Carolina very graciously makes this available to libraries across North Carolina. And we received access to it in early 2022, around the same time we started going to the shelter. When we first got access to it, we weren't entirely sure the best way to use it. Did we want to use it to try to evaluate staff or help staff fill in the gaps, or could we use it with patrons? But as we took a look at it and what it does, we realized it was really a perfect fit for what we were doing at the shelter. Just to give you a little bit of background about how North Star works, it covers 17 different topics, and it ranges from basic computer skills up to more advanced things like Google Docs. We have, I should say, individuals in the class that have never touched a mouse before or turned a computer on. And then we have others that might have internet or an email address. And then we have others that might even have some experience with stuff like Microsoft Word and Google Docs. We've even had a few that have experience with more advanced things like coding and cybersecurity. So you can see we need something that addresses all those different levels. And North Star is a perfect fit for that with all of the different subjects that it covers. So when participants use North Star, they take an assessment to start with, and that assessment evaluates where they're at and gives them a list of skills to work on. So to explain a little bit more about why it's such a perfect fit, It lets users work at their own pace because we definitely have individuals who want to go a little faster, but then some people are completely new to this. They need a little more time to work on each section. So because it's an individual one-on-one experience, we can go around and help people on their individual experience and go in more depth on topics for those people that need it when they need it. It lets them pick the topics they want to focus on. If we encourage people to start with computer basics just to get those certificates, but if they want, if that's boring to them, they can go on and move on to some of the more advanced topics. Go straight there. It, like I said, part of the assessment process is at the end of the assessment, it will identify the specific areas where people need improvement. So it's really great for filling in those gaps. We were a little skeptical at first whether people would respond positively to North Star. But I do a little informal survey after each new session with North Star, and I've really been surprised at just how overwhelmingly positive the response has been. And what I hear over and over again is that they really like that North Star fills in those gaps. A lot of times they might know what something is, but they don't know what it's called. They might know one specific thing about a topic, but not the other details about how it works. So North Star is great for actually going through and making sure they have a solid foundation of everything in a topic before they move on to the next one. Again, it provides that hands-on interactive experience. That's another thing that I hear in the feedback is that they really enjoy how it's interactive. It lets them try things. I know that I don't really feel like I've learned something until I've actually done it. And North Star provides the opportunity to give them a way to try doing it on their own and really internalize that information and new skill. It lets them use their progress. That's always very encouraging to them. When they start out and do the assessment, a lot of times they'll get a low score to start with, but I tell them, hey, that's great. It's a great place to start. It's only going to go up from there. And it really does. As soon as they start doing the practice, they're only going to see that number on the assessment go up and up until they pass it. And that brings us to the last thing is those certificates are just great to be able to give them as something to take away from the process and show to employers to show that they have those digital literacy skills. We've heard from participants in the program that they've shared their certificates with employers, and they think that being able to show that certificate in the interview really helped them actually get the job because they could show the employer that they do actually have those digital literacy skills that are so critical to the workforce today. So we've had many people get their certificates at this point, and it's just been a very good experience for helping people get the skills they need to apply for the workforce and also to apply for social services too. So we realize not everyone has access to North Star. Again, the State Library of North Carolina makes it available to public libraries across North Carolina, and we're very thankful to them for that. But if you don't have access to North Star, there are alternatives. Anything that is an interactive tutorial is a good way to do this kind of digital literacy outreach. GCF Global is a good example. They have a wide range of tutorials. We do use GCF Global, their typing tutorial, because sometimes we have people at the shelter outreach who want to work on their typing, and North Star doesn't have a way to do that. They tell you how the keyboard works, but don't give you actual typing practice. So GCF Global, we use the typing tutorial from that, but they have a wide variety of topics. The main advantage of North Star is that it does have that assessment component, which actually does measure their progress and identify the skills that they need to work on. But otherwise, the tutorials on GCF Global are high quality. They just don't have that assessment component. There are definitely other alternatives out there, so feel free. Anything that's a good interactive tutorial is a good way to do this kind of outreach. I just wanted to end this segment just talking about a quote from Gregory Dunk, the Friends of the Homeless Shelter Director. You can see a picture here. He's a great guy, as you can tell here. He's a very fun guy, very positive. We always love interacting with him as we go each week. But Mr. Dunk said, I would just like to say how much I appreciate the folks from the library coming out. I've seen a drastic change in the guests. The library's been a great asset for the people here, helping with resumes and cover letters, housing applications, and much more. The guests here look forward to them coming. And we always look forward to going to. It's just a great experience, very rewarding. And it really does feel like we're making those connections with people who really do need that digital literacy help. So I'm now going to turn things back over to Sarah. She's, like I said, this partnership with the Friends of the Homeless Shelter, it's been going on for several years now, and it's led to some other exciting developments. So she is going to talk about that now.
Yeah, outreach can lead to some absolutely fantastic things. And one of the results of the outreach at that Friends of the Homeless shelter, when you develop these partnerships, sometimes when funding opportunities become available, You don't have to work very hard to come up with something. It's already really obvious how you can use that funding. And that happened for us with the Community Partnership for Literacy grant that became available. This was from the Institute of Museum and Library Services under the provision of the Library Services and Technology Act as administered by the State Library of North Carolina. We applied for that. We knew that we wanted to work with the Friends of the Homeless Shelter. So some background on that, the Friends of the Homeless Shelter for many, many years was only open to men. We have a domestic violence shelter here in Lenore County, but if women or children did not fit under that specific category, there wasn't a place for them to go. Or even if men had, children with them, there wasn't a place for them to go. But not that long ago, the shelter actually opened up to women and children. So we knew that we wanted to make a space in the shelter that was as welcoming as possible because families are going through enough when they're at the shelter. We really wanted them to have a space. And so you'll see right here in this slide, that's our ribbon cutting for the Early Literacy Center. I just want to say that community support for it was awesome. The mayor was there, city council members, our county manager, county commissioners. It was wonderful to have everybody there for this. And I just want to say that one of the good things about having partnerships based on outreach like this is that you're very visible, and what you're doing as a library system is very visible to the people that fund you. So this was really, really important in multiple ways. And we were very thankful. We received the grant. You'll see the before picture. They had a common space at the shelter. It was just a couple of couches and some really used coloring books. That was about it. So one of the first things that we did was purchase books, which makes sense. We did focus on pre-K through second grade. We wanted to do early literacy. We ordered the paperbacks from Scholastic. We had no intention of cataloging them because we knew that there was a good possibility that some of those books were going to walk away with the kids when they left the shelter. And that was absolutely okay with us. In fact, that was actually very exciting, the idea that they would love the books enough to take them with them when they found a more permanent shelter. And so we did not catalog them. We got more than we needed just for those shelves that you'll see in the picture. And that way, when our staff was doing the outreach, they could see, okay, we need to go ahead and put more books out on the shelf. And we did want to do kid-friendly furniture. You'll see those pops of color and some of the lower chairs. And we did manipulatives. Magnetiles are at all our libraries are really popular. So that's one of the manipulatives that we purchased. We did a couple of tablets. We had gotten funding previously for something that included launch pads. Launch pads are great because all it is games, educational games for kids. So you know that it's actually quality screen time. So we did some tablets for them. And then as important as the typical language literacy is, we really wanted something that was going to foster imagination and creativity. So we went ahead and added that farmer stand that you see on there. We tried to go with the whole agriculture thing because it is Eastern North Carolina, and that's very, very important here. So our farmer stand, it included bins with different fruits and vegetables in colors so that they could sort their colors, and we'd get to know that because that's important. Also, it's a puppet stand, so we had barnyard animals that they could play with, and even the rugs got some farm, so as well as houses on there, so they could have tractors and other, construction equipment to play with on there. And then finally, you'll see the computer in that picture too. We didn't want to neglect the teens or even the caregivers. So they can still be in there in that space, with their kids. Teens can do their homework on the computer. Adult caregivers can, whether it's, online school as well as applying for jobs or whatever it is that they needed to do. So that room was going to be fun. It was also going to be educational. It was also going to foster families spending time together. And it was awesome that we had the chance and that we got the funding to do that. So again, outreach can truly lead to some fantastic things. And there are a lot of different ways that you can approach it. in order to strengthen community relations. So I know that Justin already talked a little bit about our strategic plan. Another one of the goals there was to empower library staff as active leaders through participation in community and professional organizations. So that first action step that you see on this slide, it was kind of the typical way of thinking about this. It was having staff on the boards of like local organizations here or professional ones. And that's all well and good. It's still really great. We encourage it. But the thing about that is, particularly for organization boards here, you needed to get the invite. And so for some of our staff that were more visible and that were out in the community more, like Joyce would get invites to be on boards all the time, and she'll talk about that. But also our director, Melanie Morgan, lots of people approach her to be on their boards. But not all of our staff are going to receive those invitations, and we really wanted them to have the opportunity to give back to the community in a different way. So you'll see that second action step is to participate in group volunteering activities. And that was something that all of us could do. So in this next slide, you'll see this is us volunteering at Mary's Soup Kitchen, which is actually located right next to the Friends of the Homeless Shelter. We do this every month. We usually send 3 to 4 staff members, and we do make sure that we rotate staff from all departments, so everyone's got a chance to volunteer. Typically, it is meal prep, distribution, we always stay and clean up, but sometimes they have more volunteers than at other times. So we've helped with sorting the donations. We've helped with making sure that freezers are at the right temperature, anything that they need help with. We are right there for them. And we also have started doing it at a food pantry in Greene County, and we're trying to do one in Jones County as well, just so, again, we're representing all of the counties that we serve. We're giving all of our staff a chance to volunteer. And people see us out there, and they know that library staff aren't just clocking in and clocking out. Like, they care about the people of their communities. They care about their quality of life. And what that means is when people come into our library, they know that they can talk to us about what they need without being judged. And this really reinforces what Justin was talking about before, about the library as a community center. So I'm going to go back a little bit and just give some background information about what influenced us to really rethink our approach to existing library services and outreach. So even before COVID hit, we noticed more and more that our patrons were coming in and they were really struggling. Like, they needed help getting vital services like shelter, like food, mental health services. And these are resources that library staff just aren't generally trained to navigate. But you know who is? Social workers. So as a small library system, I did not think that we would ever have the opportunity to have a social worker on staff. But again, thank you to the State Library of North Carolina. I got a scholarship to go to the Public Library Association conference in Nashville in 2020. And one of their sessions was about social work interns at small and medium-sized public libraries. And the message was simple. If you live by a university, and sometimes even community colleges that have a social work program, their students will need to do internships. And public libraries are really, really good places for that. So after the conference, we contacted East Carolina University, and they were fantastic about working with us to place student interns here at the public library. And for the first couple of major projects for those students, number one, we wanted them to put together a resource guide. We didn't have anything like that locally. And what we did have access to was really outdated. So we wanted them to work on that resource guide. And number two, we started the Let's Connect program, which is basically just one-on-one, the students sitting, the interns sitting with the patrons and getting them the resources they need. Next slide. So we started the Let's Connect program with our interns. And it was very, very successful. We were helping out a lot of people, but it was limited. They were only here during the spring semester, and we knew that it had so much potential and that it could help so many people. So we applied for a grant again through LSTA and the State Library of North Carolina, and received one for funding 2 years salary for a social worker, as well as a series of mental health programs. And it was wonderful that we received that grant and that we had the chance to bring in Joyce Hawkins. She is our social worker, and I am going to send it on over to her now.
Hi, my name is Joyce Hawkins, and I am the research social worker at the News Regional Libraries. So I know a lot of people are wondering why a social worker at the libraries. Well, the answer is who visits the library? Everybody. So we have families, we have seniors, we have young people, homeless individuals, we have people with mental illnesses and disabilities, and we serve them all. So there was a time when going to the library just meant that you were going to look for books or technology, but the library has changed. Like they were saying earlier, we are a social community hub where everybody visits, not just for technology services, but to get their social welfare needs met as well. So the staff at the library is very knowledgeable, very intelligent, but they were not equipped to handle the social welfare needs that our patrons had, the questions that they needed answers to. So I met a countless number of patrons that came in who were frustrated and just sad and broken, and they needed support. So they came to the library because they were fear of going to other places, traditional places, because they don't want to be labeled, they didn't want to be judged for going to ask for services. So they chose to come to the library where they feel more comfortable asking for help. So like she was saying, I am the coordinator for the Let's Connect program. And this program is just what the name implies. I go out into the community and I locate resources and services, and then I bring that information back to the library and I share it with our patrons or whoever that comes that might need that information. So through this program, people have had access to mental health providers, utility and rental assistance, housing assistance, food and pantries, senior services, and also the services. Another thing that I am proud of most about our library is that we do have that resource guide that was started by the interns. So we realize that not everybody has a social worker on staff at the library, but creating a resource guide is a useful tool that staff can use to help people when they do come in with those answers, with those questions. So the resource guide provides our agencies and our staff with access to services and information, and all this information is in one place at their fingertips. So our resource guide includes agency names, their contact information, when they're available, and what services are available. So each agency can tailor their resource guide to fit their needs and their communities, their community or communities that they serve, because a lot of agencies do serve more than one county. It's included anything from behavioral health to veteran services. Another thing that we found helpful in creating a resource guide is reaching out to those community partners and asking for their help and their input. That way we're ensured that we have the correct information right from the mouth as we speak. So we get that information directly from them and include it in our resource guide. So this ensures that together we can support our communities, and it is updated yearly. So the information that we do have is the most accurate information that we are sharing with each other and the community. So I encourage please reach out, go out on our website and take a look at our resource guide. It's available to anyone that needs it, anyone that needs to find services for their people in their community, in our communities. And like you said, you can tailor your resource guide to what best meets your needs in your community. So we're going to talk about community engagement and why it's so important. So community engagement involves going out into the community and visiting other agencies, finding what they have to offer. So doing that, you'll find out what's going on in your community and who's doing what. That way you won't be duplicating services when you do offer them to our patrons. You'll find out about new agencies that's coming into your community. You also find out about agencies that are changing or agencies that don't exist anymore. Another way to engage your community is by joining local boards in the county, serving on various committees, attending community meetings, and resource fairs. By doing this, you will find out firsthand what other agency has to offer. Engaging in your community will help you collaborate with your partners and your community leaders as well. And that way you can advocate for change in your community. So identify your community strengths and your weaknesses is another thing that engaging in your community does. So you can't make changes. You don't know what to offer if you don't know what your community has. So visiting other agencies builds trust and establishing relationships. So for example, like they were saying earlier, we do visit our homeless shelter. So as a social worker, I do work a lot with our homeless individuals. So by joining I was at another committee meeting and I found out about our rapid rehousing services that are available in our community. So one of our young men was actually sleeping in an abandoned house. So being able to know about this resource through my community partner, we were able to connect him with resources so that he could find a place to live. And luckily, 2 days before the snowstorm came in, he had his keys to his new house. So he wouldn't have to be sleeping in an abandoned building. So I'm so glad that I partnered with communities. And like I said, it's so important to go out and visit, establish those relationships and find out what's out there. So finally, I'm going to talk about sharing with you the importance of outreach and how to establish outreach in your communities. So outreach is one of the most important activity that I do as a social worker in the community that I serve. One of the ways I personally do outreach is with our digital resource rover, our DRR for short, and a lot of people in our community call it the mobile library. So I go out with the DRR and we go out into areas that people typically don't come to the library on a day-to-day basis. So we go out into the low-income areas, the housing areas, maybe daycare centers, adult senior service centers. And so we go out there, and this is important because we're able to be seen in their neighborhoods. They get our services without having to leave their neighborhoods. And so the more that we are visible out there, the more that they are comfortable with us and feel that we're not a threat and be able to access the services that we have. So we can offer what we have in the library as well as in the community. And so by being out there in the community, you find out, like I said before, the strengths and the weaknesses and the challenges that our patrons have on a day-to-day basis. So the more we go out there, the less likely, the more that we go out there, the more likely that we can serve people that wouldn't even know about our services. So going out there, being seen, to find out what we do have to offer. So by going out in the neighborhoods, you'll get a chance to meet people in different areas and different stages of their lives. And like I said, you will get to know the firsthand challenges that they face. Since transportation is an issue for a lot of our people that we serve, going out there in their neighborhood will give them access to our services without having to leave their neighborhoods. So they get a chance to see us use our services, even when transportation is a barrier. So I truly believe that outreach is the bridge that gaps services to the people that need those services. Another key aspect of outreach involves attending various outreach events in your community. So this is the fun part for me. So I want to share some examples of places that are available in your community for outreach. Vendor fairs. A lot of community have their own festivals. For example, the Pickle Festival, the Dogwood Festival, the Barbecue Festival. And these festivals, they have opportunities for agents out and set up a table to highlight their services and the things that their agency has to offer. Make contact with these festivals and get out and get a spot as a vendor and reach the people in the community that way. A lot of people have local health departments and the community health center. They have yearly events that they put on. So you can reach out to those partners as well to go out to their event and share your information. And in turn, they will come out to yours and we'll all be able to share multiple information to multiple people at one time. So there are other events out there that you can join, like National Night Out, Senior Resource Fairs, veteran events, community resource fairs, block parties, back to school drives, mental health fairs, and all of those are great places to go if you want to do outreach. And another thing is majority of our counties do have local food pantries through churches or other organizations. This is a great place to outreach because you're able to reach multiple people at one time in one place. And a lot of times that the pantries have a lot of people there, so you can reach a lot of people. So I personally volunteer at our mobile markets on their distribution day. Sorry. And when they're coming out to get the food, I'm actually there to share the information, to help give out my flyers and share information. A lot of counties have DSSs, the health departments, barbershops, laundromats, even the non-traditional places that you might think that wouldn't be suitable to do outreach in are available to go out there. So like I said, I've been out there to many places, daycare, Head Start services. These are great places to do outreach. And so one of my favorite places that I got a chance to do outreach this year was to our Maury Correctional Facility, which is a prison in Maury, North Carolina. So they had their first resource fair for their inmates there. And I was honored to be asked to be one of the vendors. So there were about 25 vendors there and over 100 inmates. So resource fair was offered to the people that would be getting out of jail within the next 2 to 3 months. And it was an awesome experience. But what made it even more awesome was one of the guys that got released, he actually came into the library and he thanked me for us coming out there, sharing information, just sharing words of encouragement. And he's doing very well. He found a program in another county that he has a job. They found him a part-time job. And he's also back in school to get his GED. So I believe 100% in doing outreach, reaching people, because I know I've seen firsthand the difference that it has made in people's lives, especially when they're trying to move forward and make a better life for themselves. So outreach is great. It is a great tool for sharing your agency's information. It's a great tool for meeting people, for establishing relationships. So I know that if you wanted to do outreach, and some of these examples that I've given are great places to start. So I've just shared with you about how the Let's Connect program works, about our resource guide, about our digital resource rover. I've also talked about the importance of engagement and outreach. So at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Justin, who has a few things to say in our wrap up.
All right, thank you, Joyce. We just wanted to close here by sharing a few tips and takeaways from our years of doing outreach. We would definitely be lying if we said every outreach effort was a complete success. We definitely learned things from things that go wrong over the years, because things can go wrong. So here are some tips based on our lessons learned over the years. Definitely don't go it alone. Always have a partner. Obviously, this is important for safety reasons, but especially if you're doing a new outreach expedition, you might not know exactly what you have in store for you. So just make sure that you have someone with you and you can be better prepared for whatever comes your way. That kind of brings us to the next tip is bring a hotspot, because you never know when you're going to need internet. You don't know when you might need to look something up, or you might have to connect back to the library's ILS to help someone with something to connect them with the library. And again, you might, especially if it's a new outreach opportunity, you don't know what the internet situation is going to be there as well. So bringing a hotspot is helpful for just making sure that you have internet access when you need it. It's always important to have something you can give people that they can refer to later. We love to do the quarter sheet flyers or half sheet flyers that people can take with them and they can refer back to later about a particular program or service when they think about it later and they need it. You can give your card out with your contact information. Swag is always great. Of course, it can get expensive if you're doing a lot of outreach, but we do love swag. We just have to use it a little sparingly. But it's just so essential to have something you can give patrons that they can refer back to later, because they might not necessarily need the service now, but there will be a time in the future where they might need it. So having something that they can look back at and refer to is just so important. You want to try to always provide an activity instead of waiting at a table. Going to a resource fair is great, but it's always it's always better if you can come up with something to actually get them engaged, get them participating in something, make that positive association with the library, and make sure they remember the library in a good light. It'll help when they think later and they need a service. Oh, the library can help. The flip side of that is just to make sure that you respect space and privacy. You don't want to be too pushy, especially, again, in those resource fair settings. You want to approach people but not be too aggressive if someone doesn't want to engage. Again, the most important thing is just that patrons go away with a positive impression of the library and not a negative one. And that brings us to the last point, is have fun, because outreach can be fun. It's always fun to go out to new places, meet new people. So just make sure that it's clear that you're having fun. Again, just that positive impression of the library, making sure that they remember the library in a good light. It will help when they need the library services to actually think of us and remember that they can come to us when they need our assistance. And so we'll close with the takeaways for your library if you want to replicate some of these outreach efforts. We'll start. This first one is not necessarily specifically outreach, but it's huge in connecting with your community, is creating that resource guide. It will help have a resource for all of your staff to refer to if they want to know what's available in the community. So it's good for helping brainstorm outreach, but it just helps everyone get more connected and know what's there when people need assistance. So you can definitely use ours as a template. We use LibGuides to create ours. So you can use ours as a template, or you can use your own format if you like Padlet or another online platform. But you can definitely use ours as an example. You can refer back to that QR code earlier in the slides, or you can also go to our website, newslibrary.org. It's under the resources tab. You can use some of our ideas for outreach that we mentioned earlier. That list on the slide where Joyce was talking about outreach is great for some ideas of where to do outreach. But we definitely do encourage you to brainstorm your own ideas too, because the big thing there is every community is different. What the best place for outreach in one community might not be the best place for outreach in another community. Everybody's unique. Everybody has different types of community. So just do some thinking about where you can go in your community that can really make a difference, and where you can really reach those people that aren't currently aware of your services or can't get to the library. And then LSTA, we've said it over and over again today, LSTA, but it is such a great resource for grants, for funding projects, for new projects and initiatives. So we always look at our LSTA funded projects as pilot programs for trying out new things and then trying to refine them as a sustainable service. So it's just a great resource. Other grants are great as well. But those are great resources for people who want to try some new things. LSTA funding is a great way to try those out. And then we want people to treat outreach as an opportunity to connect with patrons and build those relationships and trust. It goes back to what Sarah was saying about how our outreach efforts, by going to the shelter, the soup kitchen, out on the rover to public housing, we've been able to identify so many more patrons by name. Like when we go to the soup kitchen, half the people that come in now we can identify by name. And it just helps us build relationships with them. And that in turn builds trust. And they feel like they can come to us when they need our assistance. And it just helps us be able to provide that assistance to them. So thank you. We do plan to be at the presentation to take questions. But thank you everyone so much for having us as presenters.
And thank you so much, Justin, Joyce, and Sarah. This was great. You shared a lot of really, really awesome information with us that I think a lot of people can take back and maybe put into practice at their libraries. If you have questions, again, Justin mentioned you can contact the presenters directly through the Whova app or talk to them in the chat if you're there live. An evaluation is provided with the conference session resources, and we welcome your feedback about this session and about the conference overall. So thank you so much for making the 2025 Southeast Collaborative Online Conference successful.